another episode of In the Nude. I want to continue talking about safety because it's such a foundational part of healing. Last time we talked about grounding and breath work and all of that. But today we're going to talk about feelings. As a person who didn't do feelings, and I very much said it that way, I don't do feelings. What was called Robot Rachel for a long time because I literally just wouldn't allow myself to have feelings because I felt like it was a complication. I felt like it was just complexity and frustration and there was no good that came from it. I now know the science that I'll share with you that if you don't have feelings, they still exist even if you're ignoring them. They're an actual physical thing that exists in your body, and when you don't do something with them and don't let them exist and don't let them process and leave, they stay like a particle of energy inside your body, just charging, waiting till their moment they can escape, okay? So when you suppress feelings, that will cause more problems in the future. Anyway, so let's talk about what people say. Let's feel our feelings. Feel your feelings, process them. What does it mean? What does it practically look like? Let's talk about it, okay? So let's give frustration an example, and then we can talk about anger, right? To give two practical ways that I would handle frustration. I'm a parent, so anybody who else is a parent knows that frustration is just like built in. Most people's days, it's built in, but like with parenting, it's a whole nother thing, or at least for me, especially considering childhood trauma, but that's a whole nother story. Anyway, I look at anger and I ask the first question when I start feeling angry. One, is this something that was a building frustration or is this something that's a flash in the pan frustration? What does that mean? Building frustration. Say, for example, you ask somebody or give somebody a boundary, like, please stop tapping me. I don't appreciate that, right? Technically not full out a boundary, but you've put up a please don't, right? And they do it again. And then you say it again, and then they do it again. And you're like, each time you're letting them cross the boundary of what you've asked, you're getting more frustrated. That's a building frustration, right? A flash in the pan frustration, however, is where you're calm, you're chill, and then something happens and you go from being calm and chill to like just like the guy, the red anger guy from Inside Out, or like, you know, if you're old school, Clue, the flames, they're licking my face, that level of angry. That's what I'm talking about when I say flash in the pan, where you go from nothing to everything. Usually, a lot of the time, when you go flash in the pan angry, it's a trigger. What does that mean? It means something inside of your body. Well, we're going to pause for a second. Anger. What is anger? Anger is protection. It's not this like hugely negative thing. Even if you've experienced it and only had the negative side of it wielded like a knife, anger is not innately bad. Anger is a part of yourself that loves you. When you have anger, anger is a part of yourself that loves you. It's a part of you that's saying, I deserve better. Or anger for somebody else is they deserve better, right? So there is a level of love and protection that is anger. So in that moment when you're flash in the pan angry, your body is trying to love yourself, but not in this moment. It's not about this moment. When you go from nothing to angry, that anger isn't about this current status quo. It's about something that was. So here's an example from my life. I used to get flash in the pan angry whenever there was a mess. And I knew why. I thought, so when I was growing up, when messes happened, it was terrifying. Anger would happen, punishments would happen, you name it, like it was just a very scary scenario. So when I became an adult and I started getting angry at messes, I thought I had become the monster, right? I had become the bad guy in the story. What it is, and why probably even that person in my life was angry, was for the same reason I was being angry. It was my body trying to protect me. Something scary happened a long time ago, and this is reminding me of that something scary, and I don't want to deal with it. We don't go to that scary. Therefore, if we get angry, that scary situation will go away and we can deflect and go someplace else. It's trying to protect you from having to deal with the pain of the past. So more than likely, that person who was being scary for me had that same type of situation happening. Maybe not, but we'll just say it could be, okay? So when you have a flash in the pan of anger, it isn't about the situation that you're in. It's about a situation that happened in the past, okay? Why is it important to delineate between a gradual anger, a building anger, and a flash in the pan? Because while you can handle some of it similarly, they're coming from very different places, okay? So let's talk flash in the pan first, and we'll go back to gradual. Both scenarios, taking a deep breath and literally counting while you take a deep breath can take the edge off, so you don't just like react, or not react. Yeah, no, react. That's the right word. Instead, give yourself a chance to respond to what's going on. Give yourself the beat to just be like, okay, what am I going to do with this information, right? Versus just like immediately reacting, okay? So while both scenarios, you can take a deep breath, and that is helpful in both scenarios. How you approach gradual and flash in the pan differs. So for me, I'm in that situation. I'm going to take a deep breath either way. Then I'm going to ask the question, was it gradual? Was it flash in the pan? In this particular case, we're going to say flash in the pan. Okay? I'm then going to stop and say, it's okay that I'm angry. It's reasonable, even if I don't know why. It's reasonable that I'm angry. Why am I saying it's okay to be angry? It's reasonable to be angry. When you've had a bad day, right, like a really crappy day, and you call a friend and you were just like, oh, raging, and they sit there and try to solve your problem, or they try to sit there and say, well, you could look to the positive, it doesn't help anything, right? It almost like escalates your frustration, versus if they're like, man, that does sound like a bad day. Them just giving compassion and being like, I've had bad days before and they really stink. It brings the level of anger down. So if you can give yourself compassion and understanding, even if you don't have to understand the situation to give compassion and understanding. For example, a kid gets hurt and they're crying. It doesn't matter what happened. You can go over and give them a hug and say, I'm sorry you're hurt. Even if they're the one who caused the hurt, you can still, right? Okay, we're doing that for ourselves by saying, it's okay. It's reasonable that you're feeling angry, right? And if it's a flash in the pan, not in that moment, but later I'm going to want to take a lot of time to sit there and be like, what is this linked to? What story was I telling myself? What story is this linked to in the past? For my, when I talked about messes, that's really easy. I saw the one-to-one really simply. I wasn't the bad guy. I was a hurt child trying to protect myself from facing that hurt. That realization, that understanding allows me to come to the table with grace for both my childhood self inside of me and my child there. So moving forward from that, once I realized I'm the hurt child, I would audibly say out loud to both myself and my kid, it's just a mess. Messes happen. We have to clean them up though. And saying that compassionate statement of dissipating the stress of it and actively vocalizing this both to my kid and to myself, reassuring myself, it's just a mess. We just got to clean it up. Dissipated the level of trigger it was for me. And slowly over time, it's not a thing anymore. Sometimes it's not as easy as that. Sometimes it can be completely non-directly connected. It could be a truth that you're telling yourself. Someone treats you with a disrespectful tone and makes you feel devalued, right? And that can make you go from being calm to being really agitated. And it isn't about that particular person or what they said. It's about the truth that you have swallowed since you were a kid, that you are worthless, that you are not worth respect. Because it goes back to not one time, but multiple times where you were treated as a kid or treated in a continuous environment that you didn't have value, or you were disrespected, or you were manipulated, right? So sometimes it's not as easy as this exact thing to this exact thing, like the mess, right? Other times it can be more complicated. But sitting down and processing that when the situation occurs, the next time, it helps you to have the truth to say to yourself, just because someone treats me as I'm worthless doesn't make me worthless, even if you don't say it out loud, right? But knowing those truths makes a big difference. So I make a mental note to myself when I've had a flash in the pan that this is the time, this is a situation I'm going to come back to. I need to process this. In that moment, I take a deep breath. I say to myself, my emotions are okay. It's reasonable. Other people have these emotions too, right? Any of that. And then, depending on the situation, how triggered I am, I may say to my kid or whatever the situation is, I need to take pause, right? If it's somebody that's super close to me, I don't even necessarily need to vocalize it. I will have, they'll have understanding for the fact that I may just put my hand up or finger up and be like, and walk away for a minute. For a child or somebody who doesn't know you as well, be like, I'm not going to continue this conversation right now, right? Or I need to take a minute. When I take that minute and I'm frustrated, I will go wherever I can And with kids, it can't be a long time, right? It's 60 seconds, 90 seconds. I might put on a video, whatever, to distract my kids because I need that minute to calm down, and they won't be able to give it to me without distraction. What do I do in that minute? I'm going to sit and I'm going to count my breath. I count for 6 seconds breathing in and 6 seconds breathing out. And I repeat this 3 or 4 times with my eyes open. Okay? And then I start looking around and saying in my head things that I see, right? This goes back to the idea of bringing me to the present moment, calming my nervous system down, saying, if I can take deep breaths, I'm not being chased by a tiger, it's okay, right? All the while, I'm looking around, identifying things. I'm then going to start noticing if I can feel the anger in my body, right? Is my forehead crunched? Is my jaw clenched? Is my stomach in knots? Are my shoulders high and pinched? Are they down and low? Are they like pulled forward? I notice my body posture with no judgment, just noticing what my body is responding to and reacting to this emotion, right? While I'm taking these deep breaths. Sometimes you might have heat in your body, right? Sometimes you might have a color that you feel, like just like red, right? Or orange, or you might even have like seething black, depending on where you are, right? So you just identify what's there. If you don't have a color, it doesn't matter. If you don't have heat, it doesn't matter. If you don't have a bodily reaction, it's okay. It's observing what your body is doing and how you are feeling, and just no judgment, just paying attention to it, okay? And in that, I'm going to ask myself, while I'm taking those deep breaths, what do I need, right? I may not be in a place that I can close my eyes and take further deep breaths to calm down. I may need to move my body. So when I'm dealing with kids, my kids, I'll tell them, okay, you can't hit your sister or you can't hit your sibling, right? But you can, because you can't just tell them what they can't do. In the same way, you can't just tell yourself what you can't do. You give yourself something to do. So for my kids, I'm like, you can punch a pillow. You can hit mama's hands. You can go outside and jump on the trampoline. You can go outside and yell at the top of your lungs. We can go for a bike ride. They can move their body. They can move their voice. They can hit something. They can go into the recycling bin and rip up anything that's in there, right? Moving your body can help alleviate the edge of anger. While escalating your voice and yelling can do effects on heightening other things in your body that aren't necessarily beneficial, when you're at a place of needing it, listen to your body, right? And doing it in a way that's safe. And sometimes you can't yell, right? Your kids might be scared, or it's not a fitting situation. You can yell into a pillow, right? For me, or throw an actual fit. You've seen your kid like throw their arms, or seen a kid throw their arms or stamp their feet. Sometimes that's what your body needs to release the feeling, and it's okay. It doesn't have to be this, I'm a horrible person because I have to move my body. It's natural for you to need to move your body. There's frustration, there's pent-up energy. The energy needs to be dissipated, right? There's sometimes where that dissipation can happen with deep breaths. There's sometimes where you need to go on a run, and that's okay. There's not judgment in it. At what point you are then calmed down, like you're not on this peak of like, oh, and you've calmed down. When your kids are in bed or you have a couple of minutes, that's the time frame to sit with yourself, maybe even on a walk after you finish running, and ask yourself the question, what is the truth, right? To get in deeper. But you can't get into thinking in the front part of your brain. You can't get to the thinking part and process why you're angry until you've gone through the feeling, right? So that's a triggered anger, how I'd process it. I'd get myself regulated, then I spend time, and it won't be one-off. It might be I have to spend time multiple times getting into what is the truth that I'm feeling about myself right now? What are time periods in the past that I have felt the same way? What is a connection between this time and the last time and the last time, right? It's not always going to be this simple, like I said, where you can see the exact correlation, but getting to it, getting to the nugget, the truth, the story you're telling yourself, the connection and the bead line between them is tantamount to reducing the number of times you're feeling flash in the pan triggered. Because if you're addressing those hard truths, if you're saying to yourself, okay, I took this thing that somebody else said was true, and I felt like it was true because they treated me that way. I am unworthy. This is the pill that I've taken into myself. Just because I think it Just because I feel it, just because somebody else said it, doesn't make it true. We get to choose how we perceive something. I might love chocolate, you might hate chocolate. Does that mean chocolate is worthless? Or chocolate is the best? In the same way that I might love chocolate and you might hate chocolate, just because you hate chocolate doesn't make chocolate's value decrease. And that's a stupid example because you're so much more than chocolate, but that's what I mean by if we get to the truth, we can say, just because someone treated me like I didn't have value, just because somebody else didn't give me the time of day, just because somebody else ignored me, doesn't mean that this is true. This thing that they tried to give me and I received before, I no longer receive. I now choose, I'm worthy. I'm taking this truth. I'm embodying this truth. And no, it's not going to be a one-time thing. Like all things in life, it's a continuous intake. Think about the fact that you can't just eat once and you have to continuously eat. It's the same thing true with this. Replacing these truths in your body isn't a one-time thing. Isn't like a magic pill you get to take one time and it's all done. It's a every day you come across it, you get to say to yourself, I choose this truth. I don't choose to receive that. That they can have that, they can think that, that is about them. When somebody treats me without value, it isn't about me, it's about what they felt capable of offering. It's more about what they are and who they are than who I am, especially when you're a kid. Okay, so now let's talk about progression of anger, right? When there's a building anger, when you are having the situation. Well, one, when you're having a progression of anger, the reason you're having a progression of anger is because something is continuing to occur, right? So let's deal with processing the feeling, and then let's deal with helping with moving forward with a feeling, right? So processing the feeling, we start with a counting breath, right? The deep breath so we don't react right in that moment, right? Instead, we give ourselves the half of a second to be able to choose to respond, right? So that deep breath, for me, I count when I take a deep breath after the first one's just a deep breath, but I count afterwards because my brain can't disengage from what it's doing without another directive. It needs the directive of counting. It gives me something tangible for me to focus in on while I'm taking this deep breath, right? But for the first one, I just take a deep breath. And again, I sit there and I say to myself, it's understandable you're frustrated. It's completely reasonable. Why wouldn't you be frustrated? Giving yourself that same compassion, that same hug, that same little moment of calm down like you would anybody else in your life. Then I assess, do I need to take a break? Right? Very similar how we handle these two things. Sometimes I can just sit there and I can take some deep breaths, just sitting there. We place this urgency in life. Like we need to respond. We need to say something right now. More often than not, we don't need to say something right now. More often than not, it's not an emergency. We can wait. Even if the other person feels like there's pressure, we don't have to receive that. More often than not, it's not a DEFCON situation, okay? So for me, say I'm feeling frustrated, and it's a building frustration. I've got 4 kids, and it's been one person after the other attacking, and I'm oversensed. I'm actively going to sit there, and I'm going to take deep breaths, in through my nose, out through my nose, because that's the thing for me. There's a lot of different options. And I'm going to count my breath. Sometimes if one of my kids is frustrated, I'm going to hug them while I take a deep breath, because me taking a deep breath is helping me, but them hearing me take a deep breath is also helping them. I'm modeling the behavior, right? That's a whole nother thing for parenting, but I'm taking a deep breath, and the reason I'm doing this is because I'm giving myself the time to be able to be regulated enough to respond instead of react. Sometimes a couple deep breaths is enough. Sometimes a couple deep breaths tells me I need to take a pause because I need to take a break. But in those moments, most of the time when I'm a gradual building, if I catch it before I'm explosive and reacting, and I notice myself, and this comes with the practice of paying attention, just observing and trying to see yourself. But say you get explosive and you see yourself reacting, pause whenever you can, whatever point you can. Take the deep breath. And say to the other person, I need a break. A lot of times you can't say sorry right then. It'd be great if you could be like, I'm so sorry, I need to take a break. But it takes regulation a lot of times to be able to own all of that, okay? But even if you've reacted, Sometimes at that point, you just go, right? So processing the feeling. For me, if I can, I'm taking deep breaths in the situation. I am paying attention to where is tension in my body. And with each deep breath, I'm trying to let go of the tension that's in my body. Not let go like it doesn't matter. Let go like a hug and how you relax into a hug. Let go like you're laying down in bed and you're trying to like release what the day has been so you could rest, right? That type of let go. I'm letting go of where it exists in my body while I'm saying, it's okay. We're going to help the situation. There is frustration. It's okay. There's frustration, right? That's a lower end on the frustration thing where you can take deep breaths and that's capable. If it's not, it's taking deep breaths and seeing where it is in your body. Where is the tension? If you can't let it go, just observe where it is. Observe if there's color, just like I said before. If there's not, none of this is judgment. You don't have to have color. You don't have to have tension. It's just seeing and watching yourself like you're a person that you care for and you want to know how you handle as a person this feeling, where it's showing up, what it looks like. Sometimes you can ask yourself, what do I need? Right? Like you would a kid or what would somebody else. You try to see the need that you can help that person with. Sometimes that need is, I need to take a break. Sometimes that need is, I need like not to touch somebody right now. Sometimes that need is, I need to take a walk. Sometimes that need is, I need to run. Sometimes I need to yell. Sometimes like you have this like visceral, like you know what it feels like, where you just like want to rip up a pillow. Guess what? You need to move your body in some kind of way. Maybe you have a pillow you punch, a kickboxing thing. Maybe you start taking a class that can get some of this agitation out, because sometimes we can't process it right when it's happening, right? Say you're in work, you have to like bottle this all up for the day. That means when you get home, you still have those feelings that you have to let go of, right? And in that moment, when you're having the feelings, if you can process it, that's wonderful and great, because it's going to be less work for you to process them. But if you can't, we can get there, and that's a thing, right? Okay. So pay attention to what your need is. Do you need to go move your body? Do you need to go sit in silence? Do you need to hug yourself? Do you need it? Is your anger covering the fact that you're actually hurt? Because anger is protection, right? Anger is usually a secondary feeling. Anger is usually a secondary feeling. Anger comes because of something else. It's often because of hurt, right? Or disrespect, which is another way of saying somebody has hurt you, right? Anger comes as protection. Something is going wrong and anger comes. Scared, then can come angry. Shocked, then can come angry, right? Anger is usually a swirl after a feeling. But we can't get to the harder nugget of what's beneath and causing the anger without first dissipating the anger, right? So in the situation with my kids, I'm angry because I feel overwhelmed. I feel suffocated and anxious. And I'm feeling anxious because I'm taking on too much. I'm feeling responsible for all of these kids because I am. And that's a reality. But I can't control their feelings. I can't make peace occur. But in my head, I have to make peace occur. And sometimes it's letting go of this perfect thing that you think you should be able to achieve this perfection, right? So, taking a deep breath so you don't react. Paying attention while you're taking deep breaths where it is in your body. Asking yourself what you need. Allowing yourself to expel that frustration with a physical movement, a punching of something, any of that, right? Okay? Another step in the process is you can write it down. Writing down and journaling how you're feeling when you're feeling it literally allows you, it's like venting to a friend, right? While we can talk about venting and like the benefits and hurts of venting, it's a way when you are needing to alleviate some of it that you can. And it can also allow you to stream of consciousness go from venting to processing, asking questions. Why? What truth? What story? Where is this in my past, right? Because connecting feelings often are not founded in just right now. We have this tendency to be on this default, right? Every day we get up on the same side of the bed. We tend to do the same type of 5 actions right in the morning. We have you ever noticed that you tend to be like the same types of feelings frequently? You're constantly anxious, or you're constantly overwhelmed, or you're constantly frustrated, and you're frustrated at being those things all the time, right? It's because we feel the same feelings because we're having similar thoughts as we did yesterday, which beget feeling and thoughts from yesterday, beget the same actions as yesterday, which beget, it becomes a cycle. You've lived that cycle and you don't like that cycle. How you break that cycle is by embodying now, which is a hard thing to do. It's not going to be a one-off thing, but it's allowing yourself to feel the feelings. It's asking the questions of why. It's breaking the narratives and the thought process and the feelings that you have been told and you've been living with as truths, and slowly replacing them with truths that you want. I am worthy. I am lovable. I am worth respect, right? Those are the things that you want to be true. So it's replacing what we have had to what we do so that we can change the thoughts that we're having, to change the feelings that we're having, to change the actions that we're doing, to change the results that we're getting, right? Let's talk about sadness, right? Another example of processing a feeling to give a tangible reason. So with sadness, this is like a core feeling, right? It's not a secondary feeling. So for me, if I'm feeling sadness and I have the capacity to feel it in the moment, right? I put on a sad song. Songs for me, like music, immediately evokes a lot of feelings. If you have that ability, if music moves you very easily, use it to your strength. Use it, like songs that make you like power up, use that. When the songs that make you sad, use it to help you process, to help you pull back. Like, say you can't feel your feeling and it's the end of the day and you were feeling sad and you suppressed it. Put on that sad song, put on that sad scene or movie, or relive that sad moment in your head if you're a vivid person, like somehow to draw that feeling back, because if you've suppressed it, it still exists and it still needs to be processed, and that's a superpower that you're able to pull that back out, right? Because it's not about thinking and intellectualizing it. It's not about churning the whys. It's about allowing the actual physical feeling that's in your body to come out and exist and be. Because when we try to think it, we're trying to categorize it and chop it up and put it in appropriate boxes, and that isn't actually helping. Often that's making the situation worse. Sitting there and having a feeling and then being like, well, why are you sad? Makes your body feel like, imagine turning to a child who's crying and say, why are you sad? It's like saying you don't have the reasoning. You're wrong to being sad. There isn't, when you're feeling a thing, it's not about being wrong. It's about it exists. It's, why is it raining? Well, we can talk about the science, but it's not going to do anything about the rain that's falling, okay? So let's talk about the rain that's falling. Let's deal with what is. After what is and dealing with what is, we can talk about the science of the rain, or talk about the science of the why if you can handle it, or if you know what it is. But often when we've spent so much of our life suppressing our feelings and pushing them aside and saying they're not functional, they're not beneficial, and they're going to come up eventually, and you're not going to have any tether to reality of why it happened. If you start processing feelings like I did when you weren't processing feelings, you're going to have a smorgasbord of all of these feelings, and you're going to have no tether to reality as to why it occurred, because it just has been existing and waiting for the moment it gets to be felt. And now it's coming out, and you don't get to have the why. You don't get to have the reasoning. You don't have the connection. Your body just needs to expel the feeling before it eats you up. Causes autoimmune diseases and diet problems. And when I say diet problems, I mean like sensitivities to food. Like the ramifications of suppressing feelings is exponential. There's so much science and craziness of how it all affects, right? Okay, so going back to sadness. For me, I put on a sad song because it helps me pull up the feeling. I curl up in my bed and I hug myself. I pull my knees to my chest and I allow myself to just sit with it. And I say comforting things like I would for my kid. I might hum to myself. I might stroke my arm. And I say, it's okay. You're allowed to feel sad. It's okay. No wonder you're sad. Again, going back to the compassion, going back to how I would comfort somebody else. I'm not asking them to give me a reason why. I'm not telling them they're wrong for having a feeling. I'm just giving them the hug that they need. And I allow tears come for tears to come. and I just let it be. And while it's being, I see where it is in my body. Is there peppering in my nose? Do I feel that tight, like I'm almost going to sneeze and then it pinches behind my eyes? Is that happening? Do I have this like clot in my throat? Do I feel like tightness there? Is my stomach churning? Are my legs quivering? Are my arms tight and pulled in and like hunched? Where is it in my body? What does it look like? Is there a color that's associated with? Is there a shape? It's just paying attention to how and what without judgment, without expectation. Sometimes I'm sad and it's bodily feelings and no color and shape. Sometimes there's very little bodily feelings other than crying, but I have this sparkled, like spiky shape where it feels like I'm like fritzing out. Like if you've seen Inside Out 2, anxiety when it's like glitching, right? It's like that, right? But I don't have all the sensation in my body, just like that flashing sensation. Other times I have this like deep violet purple to deep blue, right? And it's just like it's resonating like a fog of it in my chest. You don't have to have any particular one. It doesn't have to be all of them. It doesn't have to be any of them. It's just watching yourself and paying attention to yourself and giving yourself, it's okay. And allowing the process to release when it's done. We have this fear that if we allow ourselves to feel something, it's never going to go away. And we can choose to hold on to it and wallow. I've done that. I'm sure you've done that, where you're just like, you just ruminate over and over and over about the sad situation or the I failed situation and beat yourself up, right? This is not that. It isn't holding it in hostage and saying, I've got to keep staying here because I'm not punished enough, or I haven't wallowed enough, or I want to continue to be sad. It is allowing space, freedom for you to be you without judgment. It's allowing that feeling. And when we allow that feeling without holding on and pinching it down and choking it to stay in place, and without pushing it aside and shoving it out, and we just say, hey, you can be here. The feeling will come and the feeling will go. It isn't something that forever exists. It's terrifying to feel like it will, but if you literally just make the space for the feeling, it will go away. When I haven't been able to feel a feeling when it's happening, right? Which is most of the time as an adult. Say I had a frustrating day and I can't have my kids take a break. I have to wait till they're asleep, right? And sometimes at the end of the day, I'm exhausted and I don't want to deal with it. And that's fair. But just like you would show up for a friend even if you don't want to, you got to show up for you even when you don't want to. This isn't saying to hustle through and get stuff done and to-do lists. It's the be list, okay? Be for yourself, even if it's hard. So at the end of the day, if I've had a sad thing and I haven't been able to process it, I use music. I use drawing myself back. I'm a very visual person, so I draw myself back to the moment earlier that day and I relive the moment in my head until the emotion comes. Whatever means you have to be able to pull up your feeling, if that's a song, if that's reliving it, if that's working out, if it's anger, right? Or if it's pinching yourself. So be very careful with hurting yourself. But like sometimes when you have suppressed for so long, physical pain is the only way you can get to sadness. And I don't mean harm yourself. I mean an actual just like some amount. It can take you over the edge. Be very careful with that because, but it can be a thing, right? And use that very sparingly and with the advice of a therapist for the pain thing. But it can be a thing that can take it over the edge and help if you are incapable of visualizing what happened before or reliving what happened before, or music doesn't affect you, or a movie can't affect you, or whatever. Because literally somebody else's feeling, having empathy for somebody else in a movie, their pain, it causes you to feel. That can be enough, right? But you bring it up however you can. And then you allow yourself to feel it, and you go through the process like it had just happened. You pay attention to where it is in your body. You ask yourself, what do I need? You allow it to exist with compassion and grace. You don't ask yourself to get rid of it. You aren't impatient with yourself. You just allow yourself to be. It usually doesn't take a whole bunch. If it's been a really long time and you haven't been feeling feelings, this is going to be a lot, and it's going to be frustrating, and it's going to get way worse before it gets better. Because once you start feeling feelings, a lot of things are going to come up. And it can feel extremely defeating and like you're like feeling bipolar because the number of feelings that are coming up. But there is on the other side of it. And it is you are worth that energy, that effort, that process. You are worth doing this hard work. You have done all of this hard work and all this energy and being this strong for other people. It is time now for you to take that strength and turn it towards yourself. It's not fun, but it will be fun later. It's like driver's ed, right? When you take the class, at least in the United States we have a class, I don't know about everywhere else. It's not fun to sit there and read the stuff and take the class and watch those weird videos and have to take the test. But learning those things helps you have more confidence when you get behind the wheel and you start being scared and actually driving, right? And then you start driving and then it becomes second nature because you do it so frequently. Every day you're getting behind the wheel and you're driving till eventually you can drive on a highway and forget miles that happened. You drive on a highway and you can put on makeup and listen to a song and eat something while you're driving and like not miss a beat because it's become second nature. This process, all things you do in practice become like that. It can be not fun, that learning part of what to do and practicing it. It can be awkward. It can make things worse and you can feel agitated and you can feel frustrated and you can feel like it's never going to get better. But it does. Because every day that you practice this, it's going to become muscle memory. It's going to become simple. It's going to become your nature. But we're rewriting a nature that we haven't before. You've had years of not processing feelings. You've had years of just seeing other people not process feelings and wield their feelings at you. But we're rewriting for ourselves because we want our future to look different. And in order for our future to look different, we have to choose new thoughts and new feelings and new actions to get new results. And safety is a part of that. That's the foundation. We talked about before all the grounding things. Feelings and allowing them to exist creates safety in your person, creates trust, it creates bond. And I'm going to tell you a secret. When you finally process and let go of a feeling, when you've dissipated, there's going to be an energy depletion at the end of it, but it comes with this peace and this calm, and it comes with creativity. That process of allowing yourself to feel is where the music that you love, that evokes those feelings from you, it was somebody else dealing with their feeling and processing it in music. Maybe you process yours in art. Maybe you process yours in creating furniture. Maybe you process yours in exploring nature. But the dealing with feelings is where things of beauty come from. Because it isn't feelings that need to be pushed aside and make life less or more complicated. It's what makes life beautiful. And it can feel like that's not truth. I know that I have felt like that's not truth. But in order for you to have that joy, that thrive, that peace, to see it, to know it, to feel it, to understand it, it's only through contrast that we get there. You can't know the beauty of light without knowing what darkness was. Otherwise, it just is. You can't know how amazing it is to have this moment of just like tranquility unless you've lived in stress and chaos and you felt what it is to have the contrast. There's a guy who does all these extreme things, and he was on Ed Milet podcast, and he was talking about he did this thing where he took a rowboat and he went into the Southern Sea. If you know anything about that, that's insane in my opinion, but he did it. And he trucked across Antarctica on a one-manned sled, right? He does all these extreme things, and the reason he does it is because he lived through hard things and he realized the more difficult pain, etc., like that, the further their pain scale gets to 10, the more he can enjoy his life. The more pain and hardship he's willing to experience, the greater he has the pendulum swing to the other side. So if you've lived through so much pain, if you allow yourself to feel it and process it, imagine the pendulum swing to the joy that you can actually experience. But if you're unwilling to process and feel the pain and the hurt and the sad and the angry, you can't have the other side. There is this yin-yang, this balance of life. Think about an ecosystem. I was teaching my kids the other day about how people try to solve problems, right? Where they like bring in a different type of, they find a frog that can eat a beetle, right? And so they bring it in from the other location, this other like ecosystem over there, because they think it's going to solve this problem. But they don't realize that, the frog only operates during daytime and the beetles operate at night. And the frog is going to eat other things that would eat the beetles, right? And so when we create this environment of we're trying to manipulate the situation, we create unbalance. But if we allow the situation to unfold, if we allow it to be, it will solve itself. There is balance that happens. Nature, in its innate way, balances itself when we don't introduce things into the ecosystem. In the same way, in our body, if you allow it to be, and you don't try to control it, and you don't try to shove it down, you don't try to push it aside, and you don't try to like mask it up, and you don't try to like grab other people's, when you allow yourself to just be, there is this balance, this unity, this peace that can exist. But you can't get to that peace without going through the process. So we're going to talk about what is that process, what does it look like, okay? So a way to visualize this is think of a ladder, okay? And it's got 3 parts, top, middle, and bottom, okay? You're wanting to be up here, at this vagal vagus, right? Okay? It's where peace is, it's where like unity is, it's where you like feel in the flow, that's up here, right? Then you have parasympathetic down here in the middle. And this is where you start feeling anxious and you start feeling like you're grabbing for control and you're trying to be a perfectionist and a workaholic and you're trying to like, and you're running away to Netflix and you're like, you're trying to, you're grasping at things. That's parasympathetic, right? And then down here at the bottom is dorsal vagal. This is where you have hit, you have tried to control, you have tried to hustle your way, you tried to perfectionist your way, and you are exhausted. You are in extended freeze. All you want to do is give up. You want to lay down and sleep for a week. That's dorsal vagal, okay? We've all had certain points in our life where we've had most of these, especially the bottom 2, right? I lived most of my life like squashed somewhere between these bottom 2, never experiencing the top, or almost never experiencing the top. We can't get from defeated and down and dorsal vagal up to peace without passing through parasympathetic. And we have this mentality that we just get to skip it. We're just going to go from defeated to I just want peace. I'm just going to do this like 3 exercises and I'm there. We have to take the ladder through the parasympathetic. Okay? We're going to have to go from being the like down, and there's actually a level of calm in that like depletion and defeat where you just want to sleep. You just want to done. And that doesn't exist in the parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is that like anxiety from inside out too, that like the frantic like spastic splashing, right? But in order to go from that defeat up into that peace that you want, you have to be willing to pass through that anxiety, that frustration, that like grasping for control. And how you pass through that depends on how far you get up, and if you get up into the ventral vagal, right, where you get the peace. So what does that look like? If you are in that place of defeat and frustration, guess what? You probably need to stay there for a minute and just let your body rest. It's understandable that you are exhausted. You have been dealing with and trying to seize control and stay in this parasympathetic, grasping at everything to the point where you have no fingernails left, no fingers left, and you are defeated. Your body, you didn't ever decide to take a rest, and so your body is like, we're done, okay? Because that's what happens. When you don't rest, your body will choose to have a rest, have a breakdown, have some type of health problem, some type of mental health problem, okay? So if you're down here, you can't hustle your way out. You can try, but it's not going to help you. So you're down here in your dorsal vagal and you're feeling, allow yourself, give yourself compassion. Allow yourself to get curious about what you need in that moment. Maybe you need to sleep more. Maybe you need hot baths more. Maybe you need to cry more. Maybe you need to go on walks in nature more. Maybe you need to figure out where and what has happened and process past. Maybe you don't need to process past and you just need to be more in your body. In this dorsal vagal, the more compassion you can give to yourself, the better. You've dealt with hating on yourself and it hasn't worked. Okay, so let's try this. Give yourself compassion. Give yourself kindness like you would a friend. Things that help me in that was compassion, trying to deal with the fact that rest is productive. It isn't a waste of time. Finding ways to love other people was really helpful for me. It made me feel happier. It made me get a glimpse of ventral vagal when I was able to share a smile to somebody else who was a stranger, or share some type of truth that was uplifting to me, even if it wasn't fully uplifting and I was still low energy, right? Those are all things that helped. And depending on where you are, that process of getting into parasympathetic might be a slow process or it might be a very quick step into parasympathetic. In parasympathetic, there's going to be a continuous desire to grasp for control. There's going to be this continuous desire for, I have to, right? So in these different stages, there's truths that you have with yourself, right? A truth you have about the world and a truth you have about yourself. For me, down here in dorsal, it's, I'm done. I'm a waste. The world isn't worth saving. There's nothing there. And parasympathetic is, I have to solve. I need control. I am not enough. The world is my problem. At the top for me, the ventral vagal, the truth of the statement is just I am. I don't have to be something else. I don't have to have some other thing. It's just I get to exist in the ventral vagal. And the world is not my problem. Because it just is. Right? And so you can pay attention to these truths and the things that you're grasping at. But for me, in the parasympathetic, it was spending a lot of time doing bilateral stimulation, doing grounding, doing breath work, spending a lot of time trying to get outside, trying to spend a lot of time getting really tangible things and paying attention, like a leaf. And the more I could embody myself in my moment, the less I would let go and go into anxiety, go into the past and dismissing myself, or anxiety about the future, or trying to grasp control, or trying to escape into workaholism or whatever. The more I could get into myself, the more I could give observation, the more I could give compassion to myself, the more I could allow myself to be and find myself being anxious, but not judging myself for being anxious and being like, okay, that happened. That's understandable, that happened. It's this process of almost visualizing yourself like a toddler, right? A toddler gets told no like 300 times a day and falls over so many times. Imagine yourself as a toddler in the parasympathetic. You're going to fall over. You're going to get told no 1,000 times. But it's not no in this like mean, detrimental way. It's no like, oh, we're going to go over here instead. I see where you went there. But pennies in an outlet, that's just going to cause pain. Let's play with the toy instead, right? It's this self-compassion. It's this rebottling into ourselves. It's the trying to take the time when we can in the calm. Like for me, I have this like calm in the morning. I'm not a morning person. I like staying in bed because it is the one and only time in my life where I didn't feel the need for perfection. I didn't feel the need to like get up and attack the world. I was able to just exist. And that is why I love sleeping in. That is why I love laying in bed in the morning. So for me, I take that time in the morning to ask those questions because I have that calm. I can be. For you, it might not be then. Maybe it's at nighttime. Maybe it's middle of the afternoon. But those pockets of time where you can, that's when you can process. You can self-examine. What have I been feeling today? What have been I thinking today? Why? How does this play in? And it's not attacking yourself, it's just observing. And the more you can give yourself compassion, the more you can give yourself self-observation, the more you can take time to be in the moment instead of just running on default and running on the past or running on the future, anxiety. The more you climb the ladder into being able to have that moment of and live more in the ventral vagal, where you have that peace. But all of these places, to move up and down them, and there's no degradation when you're in ventral vagal. Something's going to happen. It's going to bring you back in parasympathetic. It could be something that is a trigger. It could be something as simple as a car accident. It could be something as simple as a loud noise that makes you go someplace. It's not a degradation to go into any of these things. It's a flow. We all fluctuate through these things, and it's okay. You're not going to arrive at the top and then stay there. There's nothing. It's your life is a hike going up and down the mountain. Okay. You can enjoy every part of it because there's beauty in every part of it. There's something to be seen, something to be enjoyed in every part of it if you allow yourself. But when you are up here and you're wanting to stay up here and experience this more happens with compassion. This more happens with processing your feelings. This more happens with being in your body. This more happens when you stop trying to control and you allow yourself to flow. When you allow yourself to stop trying to hold back the current or go the path that you think, and you start allowing yourself to respond to what your body's gut is. Do I have the energy for this? Sure, socially I should go, but do I have the energy for this? Maybe don't go. In order to have the life that you want, the reason why everybody doesn't have that life that you want is because it isn't an easy path. The default path that's simple to choose right now leads to the pain that you've experienced. It leads to the pain that you see around you. And this isn't a dig on anybody who has that pain. I have been that person. But to choose the path that gets you towards that life you want to have, it's choosing the pain now so you don't have it later. And that's a hard choice to continuously choose. The more you do it, the more it becomes a part of your default, and then it becomes easier. It becomes your comfort zone to be uncomfortable. It becomes your comfort zone to allow your feelings. But it doesn't happen overnight, and it comes through the pain of choosing the pain now. It's like working out, right? The easy path is to not work out, but then you don't have any of the strength and your bones start disintegrating. You have worse metabolism. You feel kind of bad. You have all these health problems versus the pain of choosing to work out, and you're choosing the pain of soreness, and you're choosing the pain of loss of time because it's invested in this, but you get the results of having better posture and eating, your metabolism is better and you feel better and you have higher emotions, like heightened happiness feelings, right? This isn't for the weak. And what's great news about that is you're not weak. You have been giving strength all of your life. You have been showing up as strong, so much so that your default is strong, and that's why you don't think of yourself as strong. You have been strong for everybody else. You have been strong to keep everyone else's peace. It is now time to take that strength that you have been exhibiting and showing and giving to everyone else and turn it inward. It is time for you to be your own knight in shining armor. You to fortify your castle so that you can be in your soft era. But a part of your soft era is doing the work to get there. You have to lay that foundation. You have to build those walls. You have to be willing to deal with the work and the effort and the pain of allowing yourself the grief and the sadness and the anger and the feelings of everything you've been through. And it doesn't have to happen all at once. It's not going to happen all at once. But it is going to be work. It is going to take strength, but the strength is going to alleviate. You know how you're exhausted all the time and you just want to not be strong? This is that strength that allows you not to have to be that strong, because you build the walls, you build the boundaries, you build the protection, you build the safety for yourself so that you can be in your soft era, but still be safe. There isn't somebody else who's going to come and do the work for you, do the work for me. The good news is you're worth that energy. You're worth that effort. You're worth being strong for. So take that amazing strength that you have that you don't even wish you had, and make it so you don't have to be strong for yourself anymore, because you've built that foundation.